This session, I'm going to talk about questioning what we think we know. Are we really sure that this is the truth? Is it really necessary and vital to our existence? I find that there are some very interesting positions taken by people. People think that they are just absolutely crystal clear that this is the way it's supposed to be, this is the only way it can be, and that if you don't go along with that, we're going to kill you. Yes, that is pretty extreme, but there's a lot of killing off going on in various ways if you don't conform to the group's idea of normal. So that isn't totally outside of the realm of possibility. We have honor killings going on every day. We have people being bullied and harassed, killed even, just because they're a little different, just because they think a different way, just because they look a different way. Now, is this absolutism really necessary? Are we so sure that our way is the right way, or is that more of an illusion that we think we know what the right way or the wrong way is? How can we presume to know, say, what God wants when we don't even know what we want? And what kind of God is it that would have us killing other human beings just because they're a little bit different, because they believe a different way, they look a different way, they want different things in their lives? What's up with that, humans? You have to really stop and look at, where is this certainty coming from? Is it really based on anything that can be measured or defined? Is there that true, this is a fact certainty? Can you do reproducible events? In the areas of religion, no, frequently it's not. It's based on some historical teaching or interpretation of some historical teaching, or based on some book that can be read 50 different ways. But yet people are convinced that that is the only way, that's the true way. And where does this conviction come from? Is it something they know themselves to be true? Or is it based on somebody told them that this is the way, and this is the way they choose to believe? Are we taking it on faith? Is there any kind of truth or measurable effect that can be documented? Science, at least, has the ability to reproduce their results. And a lot of people get tripped up with the definition of theory. In theory, science means it's pretty much fact. But because it's science, they can't say it absolutely is fact, because there's always the possibility that something that they don't understand will show up. So it stays as a theory. Now, a hypothesis is what most people think of theory meaning. A hypothesis is an idea to be tested. A theory has been tested and has demonstrated some reproducible, measurable results. So there's a little more certainty with a theory than what the common word usage means. In common language, it's, well, maybe, maybe not. But in science, it's, yeah, as far as we can tell, this is the way it is in the world. So, big difference there. That certainty is not usually present in belief systems. That certainty is rarely present in the way we think. And maybe that lack of certainty is what causes people to be so adamant about insisting that it's their way or the highway, that that's the only way it can go. And their stubbornness about even considering other perspectives or other ideas. For real, people are actually killing other people because they've got a different idea about how the way things work, or they have a different definition of God. Now, how can you even prove there's a God there? You can't. How can you know whether your definition of God has any solid basis in truth? You can't. God's not definable. So why would you go around killing somebody because they have a slightly different version of probably the same God, when you don't have that certainty in your own? What's at the base of that position? Is it an insecurity? What's going on with that? Let's take a look. There seem to be two main perspectives, otherwise known as conservative or progressive. People that embrace change or people that resist change. Some that feel like the past was good and that they keep wanting to go back to it, and others, they want to do something new. Those two positions balance each other out. But when you get in an imbalance, or when people get too set on their way or the highway, that's when problems start to show up. And most of them are based on beliefs or ideas, not necessarily truth. So you have to really look at that. And then there's another thing. The two biggest causes of conflict and destruction in the world largely have been religion and politics. Second take. And let's take a look at two of the biggest sources of conflict and destruction: religion and politics. Lots and lots of wars, lots and lots of killing have come from religion or politics and the idea of resource acquisition. Those are the main causes of wars, main causes of conflict, even destruction, is religion or resource acquisition, and sometimes politics. You have different warring tribes like the Sunnis and the Shias. Okay, I don't even know what that means. It's just two different factions within the same religion that are busily trying to kill each other off because there's some difference of opinion in how things work. Why? You have all kinds of conflicting things. For me, religion is like a group of blind men around an elephant. Each may have their piece of that elephant figured out, but nobody is seeing the whole elephant. So, who's to say that each piece of or each religion isn't accurate for their part, but is definitely not the be-all, end-all of this is the totality of all there is? For those that are basically fond of the past and seeing the past as the standard they want to carry forward into the future, well, if you really look at it, the past wasn't that great. Yeah, some things worked about it, but a lot of things didn't. So take a real good look at what it truly was, not just the idealized version of it, and see whether or not there isn't a need for some sort of change going on. Because just because it was that way in the past doesn't mean it worked, doesn't mean it will work in today's society. And it's certainly not necessarily something you can count on bringing into the future. For those that embrace change as the end-all be-all, okay, change for the sake of change isn't really necessarily beneficial. A lot of companies will play the game of, we're going to play musical chairs every 2 years. For why? Not any real good reason that I can tell. It's just kind of a change for the sake of change thing. You get upgraded programs or something, and they actually are a step backwards because they're less functional. Change for the sake of change. That's not necessarily the way to go either. Change for the sake of improvement, you get a lot more people on board with that when it's actually an improvement. But doesn't there need to be some sort of consensus about it? Some sort of group idea that this is what we actually want to do, or this is worth doing? I think that lack of group consensus is a big part of the problem in the world today too. It all depends on what the priorities are of the people making the decisions. Is it necessary? Are you sure? These are fundamental questions to ask about anything that's turning up that's a big shift in the way things are. Another thing to look at is assuming there are limited resources, which is not necessarily an assumption we can make. Resources of time, money, energy, human capital. What is the best use of those available resources? Is it really a useful thing to do? Why? What purpose is it serving? Take a look at these questions. What are the priorities? How much time is it going to take? What resources is it going to take to make this happen? Is it worth making this happen? And one thing to look at also is it going to matter in the long term? One of the things I see repeatedly is you have people getting all worked up about something in the short term. The world is coming to an end, only it doesn't. And the next week, or after the crisis has passed, then it's forgotten and life moves on. So if it's really something that's going to have a long-term massive impact, I can see getting excited about it. If it's something that's not going to matter tomorrow or next week or next month, why get worked up over it? It's not going to matter. That's where another is it necessary question comes in. Yes, you have a deadline, you need to meet it, but do we have to have the panic around it? It makes you ineffective when you're getting in panic mode. And doing it just for the sake of doing is not necessarily the best way to do it. So let's take a look at our priorities. What are we doing with our time, with our energy, with our resources? And if it's not something that's going to matter in the long term, or if it's something that you can clearly see isn't going to work in the long term, doesn't it pay to be making steps and taking progress on things that will matter in the long term? Yes, this is a subtle way of talking about, say, energy use, renewable versus fossil, but it's also in a lot of other areas. Bottom line, take a look at what you are assuming that you really know and what you don't know, and get real clear on the source of that information. Is it true? Is it not? Do we have any proof? Is there any basis that can be reproduced that says that this is so? Is this the best use of the resources, the attention, the focus? What are the beliefs behind it? In the short term, draining the swamp might be a really good idea. However, when you're up to your butt in alligators, it's hard to remember why you were draining that swamp. And it's always useful to take the longer term perspective. Is this going to matter next week? Is this going to matter next month? Will I even remember it occurred next year? If it's not going to matter, then there's not a lot of need to put a huge amount of emotional, panic resources, energy, all of that into it. And it's always, always a good idea to take a good critical look at what you're being told is true and what you're being told is right, and what are the motivations behind what you're being told. Is it true? Is it for the greater good? Is it something that will work in the long term? If it's not, question whether or not you're going to support that, and not just do it because somebody said so. Even if it's a famous somebody said so, even if it's your pastor or your preacher or your priest or whoever, if it doesn't ring true for you, it may very well not be true. Question. It's important to question and really make up your own mind. We have an internal barometer of what's true or not, and it's always a good idea to listen to that.